The call came through at 0347 hours Zulu time. Major David Kessler was 3 hours into his shift at the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar when the encrypted line buzzed. Not rang, buzzed. That particular tone meant one thing. Something had crossed a red line, and someone upstairs needed answers before dawn broke over Washington. COC, this is Kessler. Go secure. The voice on the other end was clipped, beltway smooth. Major, we have a situation developing in your theater. Iranian air defense just went active. Full spectrum. They're scrambling interceptors out of Bandar Abbas. Kessler's fingers were already moving across his console, pulling up the regional air picture. The holographic display materialized, a god's eye view of the Persian Gulf rendered in blues and ambers. Commercial traffic crawled along established corridors. A Navy P-8 Poseidon loitered near the Strait of Hormuz. Everything nominal. Sir, I'm not seeing any provocation. We got standard ISR packages, nothing hot. Check your national assets feed. Track designation Sierra Romeo 71. Kessler's blood went cold. Sierra Romeo. That prefix hadn't appeared in operational traffic since the late 90s. He switched feeds, accessing the compartmented network, reserved for the intelligence community's most sensitive collections. And there it was. A single track, painted in amber, moving northeast at 83,000 feet. Speed, Mach 3.2, and accelerating. The data tag read, State Route 71 /Habu /Senior Crown. That's impossible, Kessler whispered. Negative, Major. That's very real. And in approximately 90 seconds, the Iranians are going to have 4 MiG-29s within intercept geometry. Kessler had studied the State Route 71 at the Air Force Academy. Everyone did. The Blackbird was legend, designed in the 1960s by Lockheed Skunk Works. It was an aircraft so far ahead of its time that even decades later, nothing could touch it. Titanium skin that glowed cherry red at cruise speed. Engines that leaked fuel on the ground because they were designed to expand at temperature. A reconnaissance platform that had never, not once, been intercepted or shot down in hostile airspace, but had been retired in 1998. Budget cuts. Satellites had taken over. The fleet was grounded, stripped, mothballed. Some went to museums, others to the boneyard at Davis-Monthan. The State Route 71 was history, except now one was screaming toward Iran at 3 times the speed of sound. Major, you still with me? Kessler snapped back. Yes, sir. Orders. Watch. Record. Do not acknowledge. This conversation never happened. The line went dead. Kessler zoomed the display. The SR-71's flight path was a knife edge, skirting the 12-mile territorial limit, riding the seam between international airspace and Iranian sovereignty. It was a deliberate provocation, a middle finger written in contrails at the edge of space. And the Iranians had noticed. For MiG, 29 fulcrums were climbing hard out of Bandar Abbas Air Base, afterburners blazing. Iranian GCI, ground control intercept, was flooding the frequencies, vectoring the fighters toward the intruder. Kessler patched into the signal's intelligence feed, listening to the chatter. Shabazz flight, this is Bandar control. Target bearing 045, altitude 25,000 meters, speed Mach 3+. Close and identify. Bandar control, Shabazz lead. We have radar contact. Target is climbing. Sir, it's accelerating. There was a pause. Then the controller's voice, tight with disbelief. Shabazz, say again your last. Target is now at 26,000 meters. Speed Mach 3.4. Bandar, what the hell are we chasing? Kessler felt a grin tug at his mouth, despite himself. The Iranians were some of the best-trained pilots in the region. Seasoned, aggressive, unafraid to mix it up with American aircraft. But right now, they were trying to catch a ghost. The MiG-29 had a service ceiling of 59,000 feet. The State Route 71 was cruising at 83,000. The fulcrums couldn't even reach the Blackbird's altitude, let alone match its speed. It was like watching wolves chase a jet stream. But then something changed. The SR-71's track began to shift. Not a turn. Blackbirds didn't turn, Not at that speed. It was more like a drift, a subtle reorientation of its heading. The course adjustment was minimal, maybe 5 degrees, but it brought the aircraft directly toward the intercept cone. Kessler's console lit up with warnings. Missile launch alerts. The Iranians had gone hot. Shabazz flight, Bondar control. You are weapons free. Engage. 2SA. 20 Gargoyle surface-to-air missiles leapt from a mobile launcher near Keshem Island, their radar signatures blooming on Kessler's screen. Long-range, high-altitude interceptors, Russian-made, cutting-edge. If anything could touch the Blackbird, it was these. Kessler held his breath. The missiles climbed, their seeker heads locked on the SR-71's massive radar cross-section. Time seemed to compress. The Blackbird didn't jink, didn't evade. It simply kept flying. A black arrow scratched across the stratosphere. And then, at the last possible second, it moved. Not a turn, not a climb. The state, Route 71, accelerated. The speed readout spiked, Mach 3.5, 3.7, 3.9. Kessler had read the declassified performance specs. The Blackbird's official top speed was Mach 3.3, maybe 3.5 in a dive with the throttles firewalled. But this aircraft was pulling away from missiles that flew at Mach 6. The SA-20s lost lock. Their radar returned scattered, confused, and the missiles tumbled into the dark, their solid-fuel motors burning out uselessly. The SR-71's track blurred, the data update struggling to keep pace. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the Blackbird vanished. One moment it was there, a hard return, solid and undeniable. The next, the screen was empty. No track, no transponder, no radar echo, nothing. Kessler stared at his console, his mind racing. Aircraft didn't just disappear. They crashed, or they landed, or they flew beyond radar coverage. But they didn't blink out of existence. He pulled up the last known position, rewind the feed, and played it frame by frame. The final image showed the state Route 71 at 87,000 feet, traveling Mach 3.9, bearing 060. And then nothing, as if someone had reached into the sky and erased it. His secure phone buzzed again. Major Kessler. Delete all logs related to Sierra Romeo 71. Flag the intercept data for special access program retrieval. You saw nothing tonight. Sir, with respect, what the hell just happened? There was a long silence. Then, almost gently, Major, you've been in the Air Force long enough to know some questions don't have answers. At least, not for people at our level. Go home, get some sleep, and forget you ever saw that track. The line went dead. Kessler sat alone in the dim glow of his screens, the hum of cooling fans the only sound. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise over Qatari desert, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere out there, a plane that wasn't supposed to exist had just outrun the future and disappeared into legend. 3 days after the incident, Major Kessler received orders he didn't request. Temporary reassignment to Groom Lake, Nevada. No explanation, no briefing, just a plane ticket and a 72-hour TDY authorization stamped with classifications he'd never seen before. Groom Lake, Area 51. The name alone carried weight. Decades of conspiracy theories, UFO myths, and black program rumors. But for those with the clearances, it was simply the place where America's most advanced aerospace technologies came to life, far from oversight and prying eyes. Kessler's escort met him on the tarmac at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. The man wore civilian clothes, khakis, a polo shirt, but his bearings screamed military, probably agency. He didn't offer a name. Major Kessler? That's me. I'm here to drive you north. Phone goes in the bag. Watch? Fitness tracker. Anything with a chip. Kessler complied, dropping his devices into a Faraday pouch. The SUV's windows were tinted black. As they drove, the city's neon glow faded into high desert darkness, the road stretching endlessly toward mountains silhouetted against the stars. After 90 minutes, they reached a checkpoint, razor wire, armed guards, biometric scanners. The gate lifted. Another 20 minutes of silence, and then the facility appeared. Low-slung hangars, modular buildings, and in the distance, a runway so long it seemed to touch the horizon. The driver finally spoke. "You're expected in Hangar 7. Someone will meet you inside." The hangar was vast and cold, lit by harsh fluorescence that cast everything in sterile white. And there, in the center of the space, sat in state Route 71 Blackbird. Even motionless, it looked predatory. The fuselage was black as midnight, its skin composed of thousands of titanium panels hand-fitted together. The twin engines, massive J-58 turbojets, hung beneath the wings like coiled serpents. The aircraft seemed less built and grown, organic in its lethality. But this wasn't a museum piece. Technicians swarmed over it, running diagnostics, checking seals, loading equipment Kessler didn't recognize. This bird was operational. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Kessler turned. The speaker was a woman in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing a Lockheed badge and an expression that suggested she didn't suffer fools. "Dr. Eleanor Voss. I'm the program lead for what you saw 3 nights ago. The state, Route 71? I thought they were all retired." "They are, officially." Voss gestured toward the aircraft. "This is tail number 17980. She was pulled from the boneyard in 2003 after September 11th. CIA funding, JSOC oversight, special access program, code name Senior Scepter. Only a handful of people know she exists. Why bring her back?" Voss smiled thinly. "Because satellites have limitations, major, orbital mechanics, predictable passes, atmospheric interference. And drones? Slow, vulnerable. But the Blackbird? She can go anywhere, anytime, faster than anything that flies. She's the ultimate intelligence asset. If you know how to use her." Kessler approached the aircraft, his hand hovering over the skin. Even now, hours after flight, it radiated heat. "The Iranians tried to shoot her down," he said. "They failed. But I watched her accelerate past Mach 3.9. That's beyond spec." Voss's expression hardened. "What I'm about to tell you is compartmented beyond top secret. You repeat it, you spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth." "Understood." Kessler nodded. "The J-58 engines are original, but we've made modifications. Experimental fuel additives developed by DARPA, boron slurry mixed with standard JP-7. It increases energy density by 30%, and we've integrated a scramjet booster system into the nacelles. At altitude above Mach 3, we can light the scramjets for short bursts, 30 seconds, maybe 45. But in that window, she'll hit Mach 4.5, maybe Mach 5 in a dive." Kessler's mind reeled. Jesus, that's faster than most missiles." "Exactly. The state Route 71 was always about speed as a defense. We just pushed that concept to its logical extreme." Voss crossed her arms. "But speed isn't the only upgrade. Look at the nose." Kessler followed her gaze. The Blackbird's nose cone was different. Sleeker, almost crystalline in texture. "Metamaterial skin," Voss explained. "Radar absorbent, thermally adaptive. At high speed, it disperses the aircraft's radar signature, makes it look like atmospheric clutter. That's how she disappeared from Iranian radar. Not stealth in the traditional sense. She's too damn big for that. But at Mach 4, with the metamaterials active, she becomes a ghost." "Who's flying her?" Voss hesitated. "That's complicated." She led Kessler through a side door into a smaller adjacent room, part briefing space, part shrine. The walls were covered with photos. SR-71s in flight, crews in pressure suits, mission patches from decades of Cold War reconnaissance. And in the center, a single-framed photograph of a pilot in full gear, visor down, standing beside tail 980. No name, no rank, just a date, August 2006. "We call them the Ravens," Voss said quietly. "Pilots hand-picked from the Air Force's most experienced reconnaissance aviators. They volunteer, undergo extensive retraining, and then they disappear, new identities, no public records. They live on site, fly missions that don't exist, and when they're done, they retire into obscurity with NDAs that last until they're dead." "How many?" 3 pilots, 2 aircraft, 17980, and 17964. They rotate missions depending on operational tempo. Kessler stared at the photo. What was the mission that night? Why risk exposure over Iran? Voss's face darkened. We had intelligence suggesting a meeting between Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders and foreign agents, possibly North Korean, possibly Russian. The meet was happening at a secure facility near Natanz. No satellite coverage due to weather. No assets on the ground. So we sent the Blackbird. Did it work? The sensors recorded everything. Thermal signatures, electronic emissions, even captured high-resolution imagery through cloud cover using synthetic aperture radar. The data is still being analyzed, but initial reports suggest we identified at least 2 high-value targets. Whether that justifies a risk. She shrugged. That's above my pay grade. Kessler turned back toward the hangar, where the State Route 71 sat, like a sleeping dragon. And the pilot? The one who outran those missiles. Voss smiled, a real smile this time, full of pride. That was Raven 1. Best stick I've ever seen. 30 years flying, 10,000 hours in high-performance jets, and ice water in his veins. He pushed 980 harder than anyone thought possible. When those SAMs locked on, he didn't flinch. He just lit the scramjets and ran. Will I meet him? No, Voss said flatly. You don't have the clearance. And frankly, Major, you shouldn't even be here. But someone upstairs thought you deserved context after what you witnessed. Consider this a courtesy and a warning. Senior Scepter is the most classified program in the U.S. Air Force. It doesn't exist. You never saw that track. You were never at Groom Lake. And if you're smart, you'll forget every word I've said. She handed him a manila folder, thin, unmarked. Your transfer orders. You're going back to Qatar tomorrow. And Major, if anyone asks what you did in Nevada, you went to a conference on air traffic management. Boring as hell. Got it. Kessler took the folder. Got it. As he walked back toward the SUV, he glanced over his shoulder one last time. The State Route 71 gleamed under the lights, a masterpiece of engineering and secrecy. Somewhere in the dark Nevada sky, another Blackbird was probably flying, racing toward some crisis, some target, some impossible mission that would never make the news, and the world would never know. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hawk Brennan had been dead for 7 years. At least, that's what the record said. A training accident in 2003, F-15E crash during a night exercise over the Nevada Test Range. Closed casket funeral. Flag presentation to his ex-wife. Name etched on a memorial wall at Nellis Air Force Base. The Air Force had even published an accident investigation report, complete with telemetry data and witness statements. All of it was fiction. The real Marcus Brennan sat in a climate control room 60 feet below Groom Lake, sipping coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, reviewing mission footage from the Persian Gulf intercept. His call sign in the program was Raven 1. His official existence had been erased the day he signed the Senior Scepter contract. On the main display, the cockpit camera footage played in a loop. Altitude, 83,000 feet. Speed, Mach 3.2. The canopy view showed nothing but black sky above and the faint amber glow of the Earth's curvature below. At that altitude, you could see the planet's edge, the thin blue line of atmosphere that separated life from the void. Then the radar warning receiver lit up. Multiple tracks, climbing fast. MiG-29s out of Bandar Abbas. Brennan watched his own hands on a recording, steady, methodical, adjusting the mission systems, locking the optical sensors onto the target coordinates below. The advanced synthetic aperture radar was already painting the facility at Natanz in exquisite detail, penetrating cloud cover and darkness to reveal vehicles, personnel, even the heat signatures of underground bunkers. The intelligence haul was extraordinary, but it wouldn't matter if he didn't make it home. Raven 1, this is Olympus. We're tracking 4 hostile fighters bearing 180, Angels 25 and climbing. They've gone active on targeting radar. Recommend immediate evasion. Olympus. The call sign from Mission Controller back at Groom Lake, a faceless voice on an encrypted satellite link. Brennan remembered his response, calm and clipped. Olympus, Raven 1. Continuing mission profile. Target data collection at 92%. Will evade on completion. Raven, you have maybe 2 minutes before they're in missile range. Copy. Stand by. Watching it now, Brennan felt a flicker of something. Not regret exactly, but recognition of how close it had been. The MiGs couldn't reach his altitude, but they didn't need to. The SA-20 Gargoyle missiles launching from Keshem Island had a ceiling of 90,000 feet and a terminal velocity of Mach 6. If they got a clean lock, even the Blackbird couldn't outrun them. But Brennan had learned long ago that fear was a luxury reconnaissance pilots couldn't afford. You flew the mission. You collected the intelligence. And when the shooting started, you trusted the machine. The footage showed the moment the SAMs launched. 2 white plumes rising from the island, their rocket motors blazing. The RWR screamed. Every instinct said, evade now. But Brennan held course for another 15 seconds, letting the sensors finish their work. Then he moved. His right hand pushed the throttles forward, beyond military power, into a zone marked only by a red stripe and the warning, emergency use only. The J-58 engines roared, their afterburners painting the night in blue flame. But that wasn't enough. His left hand flipped a guarded switch on the center console. Scramjet ignition. The acceleration was violent, immediate. The Blackbird leapt forward like a bullet, the G-forces slamming Brennan back into his seat. The airspeed indicator spun. Mach 3.5, 3.7 for 0.0. The SR-71's titanium skin began to glow, radiating heat into the stratosphere. On the thermal display, the missiles were still climbing, still tracking, but their closure rate was slowing. Brennan held the throttles pinned, the scramjets howling, the airframe shuddering under stress it was never designed to endure. Mach 4.3. The missiles lost lock. Their seeker heads, designed to track subsonic bombers and cruising targets, couldn't compensate for a target moving that fast. They tumbled, their guidance systems confused, and fell back toward the Earth. Brennan cut the scramjets. The sudden deceleration felt like hitting a wall, but the Blackbird held together, barely. He throttled back to Mach 3.2, checked his fuel state, and turned northwest away from Iranian airspace. Olympus, Raven 1. Threat evaded. Target package complete. RTB. Copy, Raven. Welcome back to the living. Now, watching the footage in the debriefing room, Brennan rubbed his eyes. He was 51 years old, and every flight in the State Route 71 aged him a little more. The G-forces, the pressure suit, the isolation of flying alone at the edge of space. It took a toll. Dr. Voss entered the room, tablet in hand. You're watching it again, trying to figure out if I made the right call. You got the intel. You survived. I'd say that's a win. Brennan didn't answer. He'd been flying the Blackbird for 3 years now, ever since the program secretly reactivated. Before that, he'd flown F-15ES in Iraq, F-16s in Afghanistan, logged combat hours over hostile territory where the enemy shot back. But those missions had been part of a team, wingmen, ground controllers, rescue assets standing by. The State Route 71 was different. You flew alone. No weapons, no escorts, no backup plan. Just speed, altitude, and the hope that your bird was faster than whatever the enemy threw at you. Tell me about the intelligence, Brennan said. Was it worth it? Voss pulled up a classified image on the main screen, an overhead shot of Nathan's facility, captured by Brennan's sensors during the overflight. The resolution was stunning. Individual vehicles were visible, their makes and models identifiable. Personnel could be counted, and in one corner of the image, partially concealed under camouflage netting, sat a convoy of heavy trucks. Those trucks, Voss said, pointing, are North Korean. Specifically, they're Musudan missile transporters. The working theory is that Iran and North Korea are collaborating on ballistic missile technology, sharing research, testing data, maybe even hardware. Brennan leaned forward. So this wasn't just a meeting. It was a technology transfer. Exactly. And without your overflight, we'd never have known. Satellites couldn't penetrate the cloud cover that night. Drones would have been shot down before they got close. But you got in, got the pictures, and got out. At Mach 4. Voss smiled. At Mach 4. Brennan stood, walking to the window that overlooked the hangar floor. Tail 980 sat below, bathed in light. Technicians already prepping her for the next mission. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered how many more flights he had left. How many more times he could push the bird and himself beyond the edge before something broke. Doc, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why keep this program secret? I mean, the SR-71's been retired for 2 decades. Everyone thinks she's done. Why not just bring her back officially? Voss considered the question carefully. Because the moment we acknowledge Senior Scepter exists, we lose the advantage. Right now, our adversaries think the Blackbird is history. They've built their air defenses around satellites, drones, and stealth bombers. They're not looking for a Mach 3 reconnaissance platform because they don't believe it exists anymore. But eventually they'll figure out. Maybe we retire the program before they do. That's the gamble with black projects. Colonel, you push the envelope as long as you can, and then you walk away before the secret gets out. Brennan nodded slowly. He understood the logic, even if he didn't love it. The State Route 71 had always been a ghost. Flying too high, too fast, too strange a world to fully comprehend. And now, in its second life, it was more ghost than ever. One more thing, Voss said. There's been chatter. Iranian military communications. They're calling the overflight the Black Devil. Some of their pilots think they saw a UFO. Others think it was an American experiment. Hypersonic drone, maybe. But nobody's put together that it was the Blackbird. Not yet. Good, Brennan said quietly. Let them wonder. As Voss left the room, Brennan stayed at the window, watching the techs work. Somewhere out there, in the deserts and mountains and cities of the Middle East, the war on terror continued. Soldiers fought. Bombs fell. Drones circled endlessly overhead. But up at 85,000 feet, where the air was too thin to breathe and the stars burned cold and bright, Raven 1 flew alone, a guardian in the dark, a secret written in contrails, a ghost that refused to die, and the world below never knew. September 2011, 10 years after September 11th, 5 years after the Persian Gulf incident. The war on terror was evolving. Osama bin Laden was dead, killed in a raid on Abbottabad. Iraq was winding down, though the insurgency still simmered. Afghanistan ground on an endless cycle of deployments and casualties. And across the Middle East, a new wave of instability was brewing. The Arab Spring, civil wars, proxy conflicts. Through it all, the State Route 71 Senior Scepter program continued, quietly, invisibly. Raven 1 Marcus Brennan had flown 73 missions in 8 years. Overflights of Iran, Syria, North Korea. High-altitude reconnaissance of terrorist training camps, nuclear facilities, missile sites. Every mission classified beyond top secret. Every flight a risk that could trigger international incidents, shoot-downs, or worse. But nothing lasts forever. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Brennan was in his quarters at Groom Lake, a Spartan room with a bed, a desk, and a bookshelf filled with technical manuals and old aviation memoirs. He'd been reading about the two Dragon Lady pilots of the Cold War, men who'd flown alone over the Soviet Union, knowing that capture meant death or decades in the Gulag. He wondered if they felt the same weight he did now, the burden of carrying secrets no one would ever know. The secure phone rang. No caller ID, just a flashing red light. Brennan. Colonel, this is Olympus. We have a tasking. Priority Alpha. Wheels up in 2 hours. Brennan sat up. Priority Alpha meant immediate national security threat. No time for mission planning. No room for hesitation. What's the target? Syria. Eastern Desert, near the Iraqi border. NSA intercepted communications, suggesting a high-level meeting between al-Qaeda leadership and Iranian Quds force operatives. We need imagery and signals intelligence. Satellite coverage is insufficient. You're our only option. Syrian airspace is hot right now. Assad's air defenses are on full alert because of the civil war. Understood. That's why you're flying at night, above their engagement ceiling. But, Colonel, there's a complication. Brennan's gut tightened. Go ahead. We've received intelligence that the Russians have deployed an S-400 S-400 Triumph system near Latakia. It's their newest long-range SAM, engagement ceiling of 98,000 feet, missile speed Mach 6+. If they position it to cover the eastern approaches, you'll be in range. The S-400. Brennan had read the classified assessments. It was the most advanced air defense system in the world, designed specifically to counter high-altitude threats like the state Route 71. Where the older SA-20 had failed, the S-400 might succeed. Can we route around it? Negative. The target location requires a direct overflight. You'll be exposed for approximately 4 minutes. For minutes, an eternity at Mach 3. What's the call, Colonel? This is your decision. Brennan closed his eyes. He thought about the pilots who'd come before him. Francis Gary Powers, shot down over Sverdlovsk in 1960. The state Route 71 crews who'd flown missions into denied airspace, trusting speed and altitude to keep them safe. Every reconnaissance pilot knew the deal. You went where others couldn't, you accepted the risk, and you brought the intelligence home. Or you didn't come home at all. I'll fly it, Brennan said. Copy. Mission brief in 30 minutes. Good luck, Raven. 2 hours later, Brennan sat in the cockpit of Tail 980, pressure suit sealed, visor down. The pre-flight checks were complete. The engines hummed, their turbines spooling up. The ground crew gave a thumbs up and cleared the area. Raven 1, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds calm. Visibility unlimited. Godspeed. Brennan, release the brakes. The state Route 71 rolled forward, accelerating down the endless runway, and then lifted into the Nevada night, climbing steeply toward the stars. The flight across the Atlantic was routine, refueling over the Mediterranean from a KC-135 tanker, the boom operator wishing him luck over the intercom. Then the turn east toward the Syrian coast, the Blackbird accelerating to cruise speed as the altimeter climbed past 80,000 feet. At this altitude, the world was silent. No wind noise, no engine roar, just the hum of electronics and the steady rhythm of his own breathing inside the helmet. Below, the lights of cities flickered and the desert stretched black and featureless. Raven 1 Olympus. You're entering the surveillance box in 90 seconds. Target coordinates locked. Sensors are green. Copy, Olympus. Beginning run. The SR-71's nose dipped slightly as Brennan aligned with the target corridor. The optical and radar sensors activated, their lenses and antennas swiveling to track the ground below. On the display, thermal signatures appeared. Vehicles, structures, personnel. The meeting was happening exactly where the intelligence had predicted. And then the warning tone sounded. Radar lock. S-400. Raven, Olympus. We're tracking a fire control radar. They've got you. Brennan's pulse quickened, but his hand stayed steady. Continuing mission. Sensors rolling. Raven, they're launching. 2 missiles inbound. Time to impact, 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Brennan watched the mission timer. The sensors needed another 45 seconds to complete the data capture. If he evaded now, the mission would fail. If he stayed, the missiles might kill him. He stayed. The radar display showed the missiles climbing. 248 and 6 DM interceptors, each one a telephone pole packed with explosives and proximity fuse. They were tracking perfectly, their seeker heads locked onto Blackbird's massive heat signature. 30 seconds. Olympus, Raven. Target package at 80%. Stand by. Raven, you need to evade now. 20 seconds. The sensors finished. Every thermal image, every electronic emission, every piece of intelligence captured and stored. Brennan's hand moved to the throttle. Olympus, mission complete. Going evasive. He slammed the throttles forward and flipped the scramjet ignition. The Blackbird surged. The acceleration brutal. Mach 3.5. Mach 4.0. The missiles adjusted, their guidance systems compensating, but they were too close now, their trajectories locked. Mach 4.5. The first missile detonated 200 feet below the aircraft. The shockwave hit, like a sledgehammer, slamming the State Route 71 sideways. Alarm screamed. The right engine flamed out. Brennan fought the controls, try and keep the nose up, but the Blackbird was falling, tumbling through the thin air. The second missile exploded off the left wing. Shrapnel tore through the fuselage, shredding hydraulic lines and fuel tanks. Fire blossomed in the engine bay. Raven 1 Olympus. We've lost telemetry. Say status. Brennan could barely hear over the alarms. The cockpit was filled with smoke. The altimeter was unwinding. 75,000 feet, 70,000, 65,000. He pulled the ejection handle. Nothing happened. The ejection seat was damaged, the pyrotechnic charges severed. He was trapped. Through the smoke, Brennan saw the instrument panel. Airspeed, Mach 2.0, and decelerating. Altitude, 60,000 feet. The Blackbird was a falling brick, and he had maybe 90 seconds before it broke apart. But the mission data was intact. The black box, a hardened recorder in the nose, contained every byte of intelligence collected during the overflight. If the aircraft crashed, the box might survive. Recovery teams could retrieve it, if they knew where to look. Brennan's training took over. He keyed the emergency transponder, broadcasting his position on a classified frequency. Then he grabbed the control stick and tried to steer the dying aircraft toward the Mediterranean, away from hostile territory. The state, Route 71, didn't want to cooperate. She was mortally wounded, her airframe twisted, her systems failing. But she flew anyway, because that's what Blackbirds did. They flew until they couldn't anymore. At 40,000 feet, the left wing separated. The aircraft rolled violently, entering a flat spin. Brennan stopped fighting. He pulled his helmet off, gasping for air, and watched through the shattered canopy as the stars wheeled overhead. He thought about his ex-wife, who believed he'd died 8 years ago. He thought about the missions he'd flown, the intelligence he'd gathered, the secrets he'd kept. And he thought about the other Raven pilots, who would hear about this and know what it meant. The last flight always comes eventually. At 10,000 feet, the state, Route 71, broke apart. The fuselage disintegrated, scattering debris across the night sky. And Marcus Brennan, call sign Raven 1, fell into the darkness, a ghost returning to the void. 72 hours later, Groom Lake, Dr. Eleanor Voss stood in Hangar 7, looking at the empty space where Tail 980 used to sit. The Air Force had sent a recovery team to the crash site, international waters, fortunately. They retrieved the black box, along with fragments of the aircraft, and, eventually, Brennan's body. The intelligence from the mission had already been briefed to the president. The Syrian overflight had confirmed al-Qaeda's collaboration with Iranian operatives, intelligence that would shape U.S. policy for years to come. But the cost had been high. Voss opened a folder on her tablet, the official accident report. Cause catastrophic structural failure due to enemy action. Recommendation: suspend senior scepter operations pending review. She closed the file. The program would end now. No more flights. No more risks. The state Route 71 had given everything it could, and so had the pilots who flew her. In a locked cabinet in her office, Voss kept a photo of Brennan, taken years ago, before he became Raven 1, before he erased his own existence. In the picture, he was smiling, standing beside an F-15, young and alive and proud. She would never be able to tell his family what he'd done. His ex-wife would never know he'd survived until 2011, that he'd flown 74 missions in the most dangerous aircraft in the world. His name would never appear on a memorial, but Voss would remember. And somewhere in the classified archives buried deep beneath the Pentagon, the story of Raven 1 and the Mach 3 ghost would remain, a secret testament to the pilots who flew into dark alone and never came back. Present-day National Air and Space Museum, Udvar-Hazy Center, Virginia. Tourists walk past the state Route 71 on display. Tail 962, one of the original reconnaissance birds from the Cold War. They take photos, read the plaques, marvel at the engineering. None of them know about Tail 980. None of them know about Senior Scepter. And none of them know that somewhere in the Nevada desert, in a hangar that doesn't officially exist, the last Blackbird, Tail 964, sits in silent storage. Her engines cold, her mission complete. The age of the state Route 71 is over. But the legends remain.